Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the blind spots that plague women and other historically marginalized folks when it comes to negotiating, whether that's at work or at home. If at any time you have questions, I'd love for you to pop them into the comments box below. If I can answer them there, I will, and I love answering questions from viewers. If your question requires me to do more of a deep dive, then I will address it in a specific video about that topic. I love doing Ask Me Anything videos, and I need your questions to be able to do that. So please ask your questions. This is video 3 of a 6-video series. If you haven't seen the rest of the videos and you want to watch them, then please head to my channel and click on the Art of Negotiation playlist. So far, we've talked about personality and its impact on predisposing us to have certain strengths and weaknesses in negotiation. And then we talked about values, which are really the fuel to motivate us as we move through the different stages of negotiation. What we need to now talk about is the piece that really binds them together and allows you to be effective, and that's mindset. Mindset is the key to taking action in your negotiation in a deliberate way. I'm going to go through a series of what I call the 7 deadly sins of negotiation. And these are mindsets that we need to shift into powerful thoughts. These are the 7 most common experiences that women have. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on each of them and talk about how you can channel the opposite mindset and really build a practice around cultivating powerful thoughts instead of thoughts that defeat you. The first deadly sin that I want to talk about is humility. And this one sounds like it's not bad, but it is actually one of the most detrimental aspects that we can bring into a negotiation. We are taught from the time that we're super young that it's inappropriate for us to talk about ourselves, brag. We don't want to make others feel badly about ourselves, and we certainly don't want to send out the impression that we are better than anyone else. So this is, for most women, this is a very deep-seated sin that sets you back when you negotiate. What you'll find is that most women will use we language. They'll talk about the achievements of their team. They will struggle to talk about what they themselves did. And I find even in these videos, I talk about we, when it's actually just me that's putting this program together and offering the program to you. So humble women are virtuous women according to our society. But when it comes to a negotiation, that humility is a liability. And we actually need to channel the opposite of humility. And the opposite isn't bragging, isn't feeling like we're better than anybody else. The opposite, and the powerful opposite of humility, is pride. So pride in what we've done, pride in our accomplishments, pride in our strengths, pride in what we bring to the organization, and the value that we will continue to bring to the organization. Being humble and hoping that somebody will see the gold beneath the veil, beneath the thick veil that we wear, that veil of humility, that's a pretty big gamble. And in a negotiation, you cannot afford to leave anything on the table. So you don't need to counter humility with arrogance or self-aggrandization. What you need to counter it with is a deep-seated pride in who you are, what you bring, and why you are valuable to the organization. The second deadly sin is likability. And I know this sounds absurd. Of course you want to be likable. Of course you want to like the person that you're negotiating with. How can this be a bad thing? Well, the dark side of likability is that it affects our behavior in a way that we back off from the assertiveness that we need to bring into a negotiation because we're so consumed with either being seen as likable or demonstrating how likable we think that other person is. So often in these power dynamics, we're looking up to other leaders. And this really happens a lot with women negotiating with women. So if you're negotiating with a female boss and you like that person and you want to show respect for that person, we have a deep-seated tendency to back off on our asks, on our wants, and on our assertiveness to demonstrate in this weird way that the other person is really likable and that we respect them. We also have this thought in our head, and this comes from lots of places, that if we would just be more agreeable, if we would just agree to what's on the table, then the other person will perceive us as more likable, and they will like us. Listen, we all want to be liked, but being liked should not come at the expense of your salary, of your benefits, of your total compensation package, your flexibility. Being liked can come hand in hand with being assertive. So we need to counter this sin and this worry about being liked with a level of determination. And that's what you need to channel. Determination to stand firm in your boundaries, to leverage your values, and be clear and confident in how you're negotiating and what you're asking for. The third deadly sin is shyness. And my introverts, you'll know that this is one that can be hard to overcome. Shyness is obviously a difficulty in negotiation, because negotiation requires that you put yourself out there. It requires that you talk about yourself. It requires that you confidently go into a room, and that can be really uncomfortable. It can be really uncomfortable, especially in a negotiation that is a bit protracted, that takes time. And so if you find yourself on the introverted side of that personality scale, and you'd characterize yourself as somebody who is shy, this is a personality expression that you really need to focus on turning into a powerful position. So even though you may be shy, you are also brave. You have overcome things in your life that have shaped you, have strengthened you, and have made you ready to take this on. That bravery is what will counteract your shyness and give you the confidence that you need to step into that arena. Generosity is the fourth deadly sin. When the other party says, you know what, we just don't have the money to give you that raise, and you don't put up a fight, that's generosity in action. Generosity is something that we're taught to be as kids. We're taught to give of ourselves, put ourselves last often, and certainly if you are a parent, generosity is something that you channel every day. But within a negotiation, it is a huge liability, because negotiators use your generosity against you in that negotiation. This doesn't always happen when you're negotiating for a new job, because there's usually an expectation that you're negotiating for salary. But in most salary negotiations within an existing role, so when you initiate a salary negotiation, most companies will try the "we can't afford it" tactic. And so this is where doing your homework is really important, and understanding the company's position. The truth is, if your company has had to lay off half of its employees in the last year, you probably don't want to be asking for more money. You probably want to be looking for another job. But if there aren't any signs that your company is struggling, then this is an area where you really do need to push back. And you need to push back by channeling the opposite of that generosity, which is a sense of fairness. So we talked in the first week about the opportunity to bring in other trades, and next week we'll talk about specifically how you monetize or apply an assessment of value to different trades. If there truly is no money because maybe you're in a unionized environment and you're at the top of a salary scale, see how I rolled my eyes to that. There are always opportunities to negotiate. But maybe you find yourself in a situation where there really isn't a lot of headroom. There are always opportunities to negotiate for other benefits that may have a bigger impact on your bottom line. So for example, education is a big one. As I said last time, the money for education dollars often comes out of a different budget. And so it can be really expansive. You might get an MBA paid for, whereas asking for an extra $5,000 might be like pulling teeth. So fairness is the condition that you want to channel going into a negotiation, because your generosity can lead you to say yes when your company pleads poverty, and that doesn't put you in any more favorable of a position. You gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. Oh, George Michael. Are you spooning right now? George Michael gave us a great piece of advice for life. It's a terrible piece of advice when you're negotiating. In negotiation, misplacing your trust, your faith, your belief in the person that you're negotiating with is really just setting you up for a long-term wait and possible complete disappointment. I can't tell you how many women call me for advice about what to do because they have negotiated an agreement with their boss. They've initiated it out of the blue. They've gone through that process. They've built up the courage. They've gone in the room. They've had the conversation. They've come to agreement. But now it's 6 or 9 months later, and that pay still isn't coming through on their paychecks, or they still don't have the educational funds that they put in for. So we tend to want to put our faith in the person that we're negotiating with. We want to trust the people around us. We are, naturally, we desire to have that level of trust in our lives. But remember that the person you're negotiating with has very little vested interest in giving you what you negotiated for. Giving you a raise means money out of their budget. And the longer they can delay that, the better for their operating budget. So you'll remember from last week that the fifth and perhaps most important step in negotiation is perfecting, finalizing, and documenting that negotiation. Now, you can certainly choose to have faith that the terms of the negotiation are going to be put in place. My recommendation is that instead you channel a commitment, and that commitment to follow up. As I talked about with you initiating a negotiation, the importance of following up, especially if it's a protracted process and there's a lot of bureaucracy and steps that need to be covered, you actually committing to that follow through is what's going to make sure it gets in place. So as much as we might love George Michael, he's not going to be our best advisor in this situation. The fifth deadly sin is myopia, the very narrow approach that sometimes we take to a negotiation. So an example of this might be if you're going in to negotiate with your existing boss in your existing role, and you're going in specifically to negotiate your salary, and that's the only thing that you care about, you might find that there's pushback because there's really nothing that they can do, or there's very little that they can do, and they're not able to meet your expectation. The myopic approach of really focusing on a very narrow interest or very narrow set of interests means that you're actually giving away the opportunity to pursue a much more abundant negotiated agreement that might include a variety of different improvements. So when we're approaching negotiation, we always think about our salary. We always think about how much we're being paid, because it's such a it tends to be tied to our value, because it's an assessment of value. It's a number that we can assign to ourselves. But what I really want to encourage you to think about is your total compensation package. And that includes the level of flexibility and the value of the flexibility, the value of the other perks that you can get within your role. And so taking a myopic view means that you're limiting the potential value of your total compensation package to, whatever movement that you're able to secure in that one area. So instead of myopia, you want to channel creativity, because creativity leaves you open to a negotiated agreement that benefits both you and the other party, and which is more abundant than you might have even imagined than when you first came into the negotiation. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing for you again. Instead, I'm going to talk about the final deadly sin of negotiation. The seventh deadly sin is a feeling of unworthiness. Of course it is, right? Of course it is. The feeling of self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the feeling that we are just not of the value, not equivalent to the value that we're going and asking for, is the number one thing that's going to stop you in your tracks and prevent you from negotiating effectively. We are told every day that we are unworthy. We are told that if only we were smarter, prettier, thinner, whatever, then what? Then we'd be equal. Then we would be of value. So this is a big one, and the mindset shift, I know, is a lifelong struggle here. And the 4 weeks that we're in this program, the 4 weeks are not going to be enough to shift your personal struggle with mindset around unworthiness to one of confidence. But what you can do is take some deliberate actions to shift your mindset, at least temporarily, in going into your negotiation, so that you are confident. And you have reason to be confident. Let me just stop for a minute here. You have tremendous reason to be confident. If you're applying for a new job and you're negotiating your salary, you've just come through a competition where you've beat out all the other candidates. So be confident. If you have the guts to stand up to your boss and say, hey, I've been doing this work and I think I should be compensated for it, and here's why, you have reason to be confident. You've accomplished things, you've advanced priorities, you've demonstrated value to your organization, and you will continue to demonstrate value to your organization. So it's not easy, but it is important. And the next video is going to help you walk through the model of shifting your mindset from the thoughts that weaken us, the thoughts that make us feel insecure, to the ones that are powerful and the ones that we need to channel going into our negotiation. Thanks for watching. If you want more videos on negotiation like this, then make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, while you're here, leave me a comment. Tell me if this was helpful or how you plan on implementing what you learned. And if you want to support my work while you level up your negotiation skills, then head to the link below where you can purchase my negotiation guide. In the meantime, I want to thank you for watching. I will see you here next time.